Hello and welcome back to the Art of Thriving podcast. So, I closed last week's episode saying we were going fortnightly from now on, but here I am a week later with another episode for you. And that's because I had the opportunity to talk to today's guest present itself, and it was time sensitive to make it happen. So, here we are. I'm your host, Hannavella. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. And I am so excited to have another brother on the show, Tully O'Connor. Tully is a committed husband and father that has a deep passion for helping people explore their potential and live free and fulfilling lives. And he runs coaching programs and retreats, works with individuals and groups with a focus on emotional well-being, purpose, and creating and nourishing rich, connected relationships. He has a background in psychotherapy, human movement, NLP, leadership development and peak performance, Tantra and Depth Psychology. And I personally had a few ball drop moments in this conversation. Tully's insights were really refreshing and beautifully practical, so I hope you get a lot out of it. And so just before we dive in, a quick message from today's sponsor, Embody Man, which is a dear brother of mine's business, and men have been raving about the results of these products. Embody Man is a sustainable herbal supplement company. The ingredients are quality, and they are designed to be the perfect support for nourishing a man's body, mind, and particularly nervous system for enriching your sex life. 40% of men will experience physically related sexual difficulties in their lifetime. So whether you're looking to prevent this from happening to you or searching for answers on how you can reclaim your sexual pleasure, these products are wonderfully potent. And the Lover's Cacao Elixir is also absolutely delicious and can be a really beautiful, intimate ritual to share with a partner. Make a ceremony of it. So you can use the code Hannavella for 10% off. And so without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Tully. Thank you so much for joining me today on Zoom.
Happy to be here, ready to dive in.
Beautiful. So I feel like I'd love to dive in straight out the gate and ask you what led you to this work that you're in.
Good question. We'll give you and the listeners the short version. It wasn't a clouds parting, heavens opening moment, and then I was like, oh, this is the work I will do. It was very much just a trail of breadcrumbs that I followed from young, really. The first, I guess, significant thing that happened or moment was when my parents split up. So my parents split up the day I finished high school. And so that's already a big transitionary period. You're starting to ask bigger questions about life. And so I was going on to study physio at university, but I was starting to ask this question of what's the point of it all? What's the point of the career, of the money, of if the family falls apart? And so that just had me asking these questions in the background, like, well, what is the point of it all? And secondary to that is this relationship thing is hard. And I don't see many people doing it well. Like a lot of my friends from high school, their parents were either split or noticeably not overly stoked in their relationships. And I knew I wanted to be a dad one day. I knew from a young age being a father was going to be an important part of my life. And so it was really clear to me then that, okay, having a fulfilling, awesome relationship is going to be an important part of that. And I don't really know how to do that. And I don't really know where to go to get guidance, right? It didn't really turn into a, I guess, more intentional pursuit until some years later. So I had those thoughts going in the background, and then I took a gap year, studied physiotherapy, started working in private practice, then found the world of personal development, your sort of more generic mindset, NLP type stuff. And that to me was revolutionary because working as a physio, I was always confused as to how I could give 10 people the blueprint to them recovering from their injury or whatever it might be. 9 out of 10 people wouldn't do anything with it. Like the behavior change piece was hard. And I realized I didn't learn anything about that at uni around how do we actually get people to change. And so when I found personal development, NLP, mindset work, that was a big piece of the puzzle for me. I'm like, oh, there's some good stuff here. Like this is really helpful. And then, so that was the first sort of breadcrumb. And then that had its limitations. I was like, this is amazing. And it had its limitations. So through the work I was doing with people, sort of unofficially coaching people at that time and just helping people essentially. And then my personal relationship breakdown at the time, then that's when I found Tantra and sort of more working with the emotional body, depth psychology, inner child work, shadow work, that sort of, I guess, deeper somatic work. That's when I found that. And another light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, this is another piece of the puzzle too. And what I explored that and mentored under a woman in that, and for about 3 years. And then coming out the other side of that, I was looking back and I'm like, all of these disciplines are kind of incomplete in their own right. I was like, they're all sort of lacking something for me. And so, yeah, then I just started putting together my own sort of frameworks and drawing the best of my physiotherapy world, the sort of mindset NLP work, the more emotional depth psychology, deeper stuff, and blending it into a way that I found beneficial to create change in my own life and to support other people. So it was this blend of personal exploration. I was like, I need this. I want to create a fulfilling life and build fulfilling relationships and do all the things, you know? Mm-hmm. And I also was very clear that this is what I'm supposed to be doing as well. I'm supposed to be supporting people in this capacity. Like I've always felt that. That's what I mean. It started young. I've always felt that. And it's just evolved over the years. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Lots of breadcrumbs.
Beautiful. I can really relate to that. I feel like I've been taking pieces of different pies from all over the place for years as well. And a similar feeling of like, oh, they don't all quite hold what I feel they need to, and bridging it into something. So that's a really beautiful journey. And you're now a father to 2 boys and a husband to your beautiful wife, Kat. Mm-hmm. How old are your boys and how long have you been married for?
So we've been married for 6.5 years. Mm-hmm. So we got married relatively early in our relationship. I'm going to say 3 years in, roughly. Mm-hmm. I'm real bad at the the times, dates, and years. Mm-hmm. And then my son Rafi's turned 5 a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. And my second son is nearly 2, Ren. So 5-year-old, 2-year-old boys, they're full on. It's beautiful chaos.
Yeah, I bet. And that's something you're particularly passionate about supporting people with, hey, is like navigating and balancing healthy relationships and work and also parenthood.
Yeah. It's so challenging in this day and age. And even when I was doing relationship work well before I became a parent, and naturally me and Kat used to do some work together and we would attract couples that were parents. And so they'd be asking these questions that are like, okay, what about when kids are involved, et cetera? And I always knew a lot of the principles remain the same, but the application is different and it is more challenging. And yeah, going through it personally and experiencing my and our personal challenges, navigating the parenthood season, it's made me even more passionate about it, because it's really what drives it is, how do we create the most fertile ground for the next generation to thrive? Answering that question requires that we look deeply at the family unit. And if we want to create a thriving family unit, we need to have a thriving relationship at the center of that. Like that sets the tone. When me and Kat are on fire, all is well. If we're off, it's like there's chaos in the home. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's I'm really passionate about that from a number of different levels. But yeah, we're facing unique challenges like in family and parenthood in this day and age. There's really unique stresses that have not been there in generations gone by. And a lot of the time we are not set up with the blueprint of a thriving relationship. Some of us are. But what I always say is, even if our parents modeled healthy communication, intimate connection, like just beautiful relationship, they were still doing it in a time that is completely different to what we're trying to do it in. Like not all of how they operated will work. And so it's really us taking responsibility for learning the tools, the skills, the frameworks that help support us in the now from a really holistic standpoint.
Yeah, beautiful. What is that, I guess, sort of, I mean, obviously it's so broad, and like you said, there's so many unique individual pieces at play for everybody, but what would you say are some of the common threads that can support someone in the day-to-day, moving through the moment to moment sort of day-to-day activities.
In relationship, do you mean? Support them in their relationship?
In being able to be in a thriving, like you said, the thriving relationship at the core of the family unit. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much. I think the biggest thing is zooming out and realizing that we need to be intentional about it. A lot of the time, especially before parenthood, when there aren't kids involved and you're not stretched to the capacity like you are in parenthood, you can kind of wing it. Sure, relationship challenges will pop up, but you can kind of wing it. And when problems arise, there's plenty of space to work on it or work through it. And you can have a pretty awesome relationship without being overly intentional about it. If you're with a person and it's a healthy dynamic, right? That doesn't exist in parenthood. Like, you need to be highly intentional about how you're operating, because I say we move into the era of scarce resources, energy, time, sleep, solitude, all of these things that are really important for us become really scarce, and we get pushed to our limits. And so unless we're intentional about the day-to-day, intentional about nourishing the relationship, then we're going to struggle. And so that's often what I find happens with parents is the relationship gets put at the bottom of the pile. It's providing, right, from a financial standpoint is really high. The kids are often really high. I feel like this generation is very kid-focused, child-focused, sometimes too much so. I believe in like a family-centric approach, not a child-centric approach. And so it's work and provision from a financial standpoint. The kids, maybe if we're lucky, a little bit of self-care, but the relationship always ends up at the bottom of the pile. And then we're confused as to why there's relationship breakdown or there's no intimacy or, you know, the divorce stats are the way that they are. Like, of course, this is what's going to happen. If we neglect something, it's not going to thrive. And so the first thing is just, without judgment or shame or anything, just acknowledging like, oh, okay, we're not valuing and prioritizing our relationship in the way that we would like to say we are. I'm sure if I asked anybody, I'm like, do you value your relationship? Not many people are going to say no. But then if I ask them, show me your calendar, show me where in your week you prioritize your relationship, not many people can show me distinct pockets of time where that's prioritized. So that's the first thing. Before we get into the, you know, the what or the little tools and the little things, I'm finding the people that I work with really need this rearranging of almost their values and priorities around their relationship so that they can stop judging themselves or judging their partner. A lot of the time, if things are bad, it's your fault. If you would just all of this and we start pointing the finger and it's like, hang on a second, unless we shift our environment, unless we shift the way we're prioritizing our life and bring our relationship up that priority ladder, things are going to struggle.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then you're right in that it looks different for everybody, but I think the biggest thing once we get into the day-to-day stuff is just doing the simple things that we know work, right? And if we look at what causes the problems and the challenges, so breakdown in intimacy, breakdown in communication, resentment, frustration, these challenges, a lot of the time it's because there's a lack of appreciation and mutual understanding. So yes, we can go and troubleshoot, but if we just go in on, okay, how do I express more appreciation and how do I bring more curiosity and compassion into my partner's world so we can establish more mutual understanding, that is going to buffer a lot of the stressful things as well. And so there's lots of different ways to do that, and we can dive into that if you like. But that would be the main thing that I would share.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can really, I get that feeling in the body when you're talking about that, just the contrast to the stress. And then like if there's genuine appreciation and respect and like a choice to focus on those things and lean in, just the fertile soil that creates is really beautiful.
Yeah. And it often requires a willingness, and it's thrown around so often, but you can either be right or happy. You can't be both. Like there's a lot of attachment to being right in relationship. My way, this is the way. And what I find is we often, you know, magically attract a partner who is the complementary opposite to us in a lot of ways, right? The way we handle conflict, one person will probably evade more and shut down and withdraw more, and the other person will pursue more and want to resolve things now and not sweep. So we have these opposing dynamics, both of us thinking our way of approaching things is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for the big stuff like conflict, for the little stuff like stacking a dishwasher, to how we're raising kids. Like every aspect of life, we have these natural unconscious expectations of ways that we think it should be.
Yeah.
And obviously we think our way is the right way. And if our way comes into conflict with our partner's way, that's where the conflict comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And so being willing to really stand in the we're on the same team here and come back to that point is so key, because we will naturally become oppositional when we're stressed and sleep deprived and our partner's doing something that we don't agree with. Of course, we're going to come into that right or wrong, that oppositional viewpoint, and people just get stuck there. And then all of a sudden, this person that we love, this person that we've chosen to create life with and build a family with, becomes the competition, becomes the enemy, and we get stuck in that mode. And so being able to recognize that and having ways to shift out of that back to being on the same team, is super important.
I had a friend say something similar to me a year ago, just that if we're there's kind of two ways, like what you just said, but two ways of going about it. It's like you can either be against each other or against the problem together.
100%. Yeah.
And that was a real reframe for me of like, oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get people to like visualize being shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, nice.
Are we shoulder to shoulder looking forward at something? Or because if we're not, we will naturally and effortlessly face each other and become oppositional. Like it'll happen effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's not even just facing the problem. I go one step further and talk about like facing the vision. Like what are you creating? What are you building? Where are we going here?
Yeah.
And because if we're not clear on that and in agreement on that and excited about that, we will naturally come back into conflict and chaos in the now, because we're either intentionally creating something new or we're unconsciously just recreating the same old.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the haze of babies and postpartum and all of this stuff, people lose sight of what are we creating? Where are we heading? And without that, it gets very hard, because it's such a challenging season of life. And humans are really good at enduring hardship. Humans are very resilient if we know what it's in the name of, if we know what the sacrifices are for, right? And if we don't, it can get very hard and very heavy very quickly. Yeah. And that's when the resentment shows up, because we lose sight of why we're making these sacrifices that we're making, whatever those sacrifices are, right? And so that clarity of vision allows that shoulder to shoulder looking forward in the same direction dynamic to be much more easy to tap into. Without that, it can just be problem focused. And then as soon as that problem's gone, we naturally come back into that oppositional stance. So yeah, that focus on what we're building, I find is key. And pretty much every couple I've ever worked with, if they're experiencing significant challenge and conflict and repeated cycles of conflict, they are not clear on what they're co-creating. There's not clarity and harmony around that.
Yeah, beautiful. I can definitely relate to that myself, just with realizing that dysresonance was a reflection of the deeper disharmony of, not aligned values for the future.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask, as a man in the relationship, I always find it beautiful and fascinating how epically differently wired men and women are. And I'm just speaking to men and women as that's been my experience of relating. But what do you feel as a man? What has been some of the unique challenges that you've experienced and maybe seen as like a pattern in, or a typical threads for men in relating, the sort of challenges that they take on for themselves that maybe get in the way of being able to just meet heart to heart?
Yeah, that's a big question. I feel like a lot of guys want to be the hero, for lack of a better word, want to be it all and do everything. And I feel like a lot of guys lose touch with themselves and what they need and what they desire. And when you do that, resentment and frustration naturally builds. And I feel like with guys, this happens a bit more below the surface. Guys tend to be less sensitive, less aware of their emotional body, for obvious reasons. A lot of it, societal conditioning, a lot of it, who knows, genetics, nature, nurture, it's probably a combo. Doesn't really matter. It just seems to be the way that it ends up, right? And because of that, I feel like guys aren't really connected with what they're needing and desiring, or they're too scared to voice that. And so they don't. So they just try and do the right thing. The classic pattern is I'm working, I'm doing, I'm trying, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then that triggers their core wound of not being enough. And then they throw their hands in the air. Yeah. And they're like, fine. And then that cycle repeats, and they pick it up and then they go again. And that cycle doesn't stop unless we get clear on what we need as an individual, what we want as an individual, what we desire. And even that word need, guys, and I'm sure women too, but there's an allergic reaction to that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't have needs. I'm chill. I'm cool. I'm good. It's like a sign of weakness to need anything. Yeah. Until we can make peace with our basic humanity and the fact that we have needs, desires, and it's recognizing what they are and then getting skillful at communicating them. I feel like women might be more in tune with what they are, not necessarily amazingly skillful at communicating them unless they work on that, right? Whereas I feel like guys really, their partner will ask, what can I do? Like, what do you need? Like, what would, and they won't have an answer. And so that I find is the biggest problem, because everything else on the surface in terms of how it shows up kind of stems from that core challenge.
Yeah, beautiful. It's interesting. My personal experience has been contrary to that, with feeling like it's taken me a lot longer to get in touch with my needs and being honest with myself about asking myself what I want, because the men in my life have been very clear in that. Then that's created this anxiety around if I ask for what I want, it might create one of us might have to compromise, or it might create a clash in that way. And what came up when you're sharing then that I'd love to just dive into is the word need, like you said, the allergic reaction around that. How can one have a healthy relationship with needs? Because I feel like it's a real honor to support someone in their needs, but I think there can be these, maybe more from a woman's side, like, you need to give me what I need. Yeah, I'd love for you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, it's such a charged word. There's a couple of things that I want to share on that. The first is distinguishing a need from a desire and a need from a want. And it's okay to want wants and desire desires. And often we might frame a desire or a want as a need because we really desire it or we really want it. So we'll frame it as a need. And so it's actually just being okay in that, okay, I would survive without this, but I really want it. It would be amazing. I'd love it. It would enrich my life. It would enrich your life. And that's still valid to put on the table. And so, because what happens is, as soon as something's framed as a need, if I don't, and like we said about complementary opposites, often our partner won't value our needs as much as we do automatically. They might be able to get there, but if there's slightly different values, if we have different attachment styles, then our relational needs are going to be different. And so, whereas framing something as a desire or a want is almost a bit lighter, almost a bit easier to work with. And so there's no clear cut, well, this should be a need and this should be a desire. Like, people want to know the thing. You're going to have to just play with it. But I just wanted to put that in there as something to explore. And it's okay to want things and desire things. And you don't have to frame everything as a need. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I find really beneficial whenever we're exploring this is this frame of me, you, and us, right? So if I have a certain need, right, and it is a need of mine, if I have, okay, I have this need in relationship, and then I come to Kat, my wife, and I say, hey, this is a need. This is what I need from you. And it's left at that. It's a fairly heavy cross to carry for Kat. I'm like, this is a need of mine, like non-negotiable. and here's what I need from you to fulfill that. Whereas if I can look at that need, whatever it might be, and be like, okay, what can I do to help fulfill this need that I have? What would I love from Kat? And then what could we do together? So the me, you, and us. And framing it like that, automatically you can feel how that would put way less pressure on Kat. If I came and said, hey, yeah, I've got like a real need for, like my need for feeling like we're on the same team. Like a need for me in relationship is this feeling of teamwork. Like if we don't feel like we're on the same team, I really struggle. What I'm going to do is like just sit with 5 minutes every morning and just remind myself, I'm just going to meditate on that. I'm just going to come back into that. What I would love from you is, if it's available, and then make the request. That's much less heavy. Kat's going to be much more open to whatever I ask of her if she can sense that I'm doing something about it as well. Whereas often, yeah, it can just be placed where I need this and I need it from you. Right. And it's, even though that might be true, sharing what we can do about it ourselves creates a level of openness. And this is what I mean about being skillful about how we share what our needs and desires are. Because how we communicate them matters, right?
Yeah.
And we might say, oh, our partner gets so defensive, my partner shuts down, my partner, whatever, whenever I bring up my needs. Well, it's like, okay, let's take responsibility for how we're doing that and how we're communicating that, because there's probably some stuff we could be doing to be communicating that in a more effective way that is going to evoke more openness.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it's obviously their work to look at, okay, why do they get defensive, et cetera. But there's a lot of finger pointing going around on this topic, I think.
Yeah.
And if they would just hold space, if they would just listen, if they would stop getting defensive, and it's like, yeah, okay, that might all be true. And I can guarantee, without a shadow of a doubt, there can be things that you can be doing in the way you're being, in the way you're communicating, that will evoke more openness. Because it's criticizing or judging somebody into trying to fulfill our needs, or inspiring them into feeling our needs. Like there's ways that we can be that can shift how our partner responds, right? And that to me is like a relational leadership piece for men and women, for whoever. It's like we can point and demand, I need this, you need to give it to me, right? Or we can aspire and evoke the desire for them to fulfill our needs. Because like you said, it's a beautiful thing when you're in partnership and you can do something that can fill your partner's cup and have them nourished. It's like, it's the best, right? I believe we all naturally want to do that.
Yeah.
And then there's just this other stuff that gets in the way when the fingers are pointed and it feels like a burden, or there's criticism, or there's lots of things that can muddy those waters. But who doesn't want to have their partner feel amazing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I that's beautiful. I feel like, because when we're asking someone from that, place of and doing that skillfully, it's like we're creating a role for someone else that they can choose whether or not they want to step into.
yeah,
It feels like a very different experience. And I feel like I learned this in my early 20s the hard way, realizing that when I was communicating from a wounded place, I was just met with like shutdown. And then,
yeah. And it's the classic people pleaser, like you shared, how you struggle to voice your needs. And that's classic sort of people pleaser, nice guy or nice girl vibe.
Yeah.
And what happens when we find some personal development, we're like, hey, boundaries, needs. And then the pendulum swings. And then all of a sudden we're dropping boundaries and making demands of needs left, right, and center in an unskillful way.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, oh, the pendulum needs to come back to the middle a little bit here.
Totally. And then the same guy, when I realized like I could once I'd regulated and come into that center and then asked him from a neutral place, like the response was dramatically different.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And if you hadn't done that, you would have been living inside the story of, he doesn't care about my needs, he's so defensive, he shuts down, and you would have been living in that narrative and believing it. Right? But you shifted your state and the whole dynamic shifted. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's such an important reminder, because otherwise you can just get caught in that sort of victim position, I guess, in the drama triangle of they're the villain, I'm the victim, they're, and we try to recruit somebody to be the hero and validate our story, and which is which is good sometimes and good in small amounts, but we also need to be able to see that for what it is and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm either, I either initiated this dynamic, I'm perpetuating it, or I've allowed it. Like I've contributed to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like resentment doesn't resolve without radical responsibility of how I've played my part in it.
Yeah.
And so being willing to do that and come to the table again and again, because I know there'll be people listening to this that'll be like, well, it's always on me. I'm always the one doing the work or reflecting. And that might be the case. And it does require a willingness to step back into the room.
Yeah.
And it can be fatiguing. It's challenging. Do you know what I mean? Especially if it's a repeating cycle or something. Do I need to do this again? Do I really need to reflect and face off with this again? And it's like, yeah, it's the infinite game.
Mm-hmm.
Like deep partnership is an infinite. There's no endpoint. We don't figure it all out. I understand all my partner's needs, and then I'm sweet, and I never have to think or reflect or explore this stuff, right? Because I change and evolve. Cat changes and evolves. So it's surrendering to that a little bit, because yeah, I could just sense people listening being like, I'm tired of doing that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And then that's when support outside the relationship becomes important as well, because we all need support. And often we want all of that support to come from our partner. And that's placing too high of an expectation and burden. Like one person can't carry all of that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I feel like I'd love to ask about that. It's particularly in a world where I feel like perhaps because, I feel like my parents' generation was sort of the first generation where people could, well, maybe not the first, but it started to become more commonly acceptable for people to get divorced. And growing up, like my parents are still together and people would be surprised. And I remember starting to think like, wow, this is becoming more common. And in a world where maybe people come up against those challenges and just run and quit because they don't have the tools or whatever the reasons are, I want to anchor that in this question. For someone who feels like they've really taken responsibility, they've tried all the different ways of asking, they're taking responsibility for looking after themselves, giving to themselves, and they're still not feeling like they're being met, but they're wanting to honor the commitment piece. And I guess like the word commitment in this day and age, like how do you relate to that? And what would you say to people in that space of conflict? Like I've tried everything.
Yeah, it's such a big question, and I don't have a definite answer, and I don't believe, all relationships should stay together. Do you know what I mean? I used to want that from my core wound of having my parents split up. That's what I wanted to do. And I'm like, oh, that's actually not the case. That's not best in every case. What I will say though is that there's this fear of wasted time that comes up. Like, oh, am I wasting time staying here? Like, should I be ending this relationship and moving on? And as long as you are exploring yourself and exploring the partnership, you'll be learning pieces and healing pieces and navigating pieces that are going to be required, whether it's with this person or the next. Right. And so that's the first thing is just letting go of that, because there can be almost this anxiety around it. Like, do I stay, or like, what do I do? And being able to actually just relax into where you are is a really important piece of the puzzle. The other thing is, doing some sort of work together is really important. And if there's just a complete unwillingness to do that from one person in some capacity, and that can look different. Maybe it's coaching, maybe it's couples therapy, maybe it's doing a program, maybe it's whatever it might be. If there's a complete unwillingness to do that at all, then that can be really challenging. And then that's when the person needs to be like, okay, like what do I see for my future? What's important for me in a partner? And being able to own that, right? So often there is an openness though, because it's just often how it's being communicated, right? Often a person is being framed as the problem, and then we need to go and work on the relationship, aka work on you. Yeah. And if I'm feeling that, I'm like, fuck off. Like, I'm not like, as if I'm going to go into a room and be told by somebody else that I'm the problem as well. Do you know what I mean? So there's often a resistance because of the context in which we're talking about getting support. Right. Whereas if we're talking about the vision, like, hey, this is what I see for us. This is what I desire for us. Do you desire that too? Like, I know this is where we're at. We're in a challenging spot. I get it. This is what I want to co-create for us. Like, do you want to co-create that too? And if it's a yes, then it's like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? Right. We've tried. Resolving this, because you become solution focused and automatically you could feel it. All of a sudden we're shoulder to shoulder again. We're not adversarial. And then that can evoke more openness. Like, because the place you want to land is, of course, we need some support of some capacity, right? That's where you need to get to, because all of this is skill based. Like, relational intelligence is a skill that we often aren't taught, and we need to know if we want a healthy, thriving relationship. And so that's what I would offer to that person is look at the context of which we have been exploring the idea of getting support, right? Because often if that shifts, then the openness to that support can shift as well, right? And then start with the vision. It's almost like chunking up. When we chunk down into the more detailed we get, the further apart we can feel. So if we think about how we need to solve the problem, we might disagree on that. So we think we're disagreeing. But if we chunk up to what we want to create, hey, we're on the same team up here. We both actually want the same team. Yeah, we're on the same team. We both want the same thing. Like, then from there we chunk down, and then it's like, oh, this is where we're not on the same page. Like, you think we can do it alone. I think we need support. Like, what's going? So changing the context of which we're exploring it can really help. And the other thing I'll share on that, and then I'd love to hear any thoughts or further questions you've got on this one, because it's a big one, is there is often one person in the relationship that is more relationally focused than the other. Often we can want our partner to be just as interested in all the books and just as interested in all the podcasts and just as interested in all the healing work as we are. And they might not be. They might not value and have that interest. So it might look different. That's what I'm getting at here, is the work, quote unquote, might look different, right? And it doesn't have to look the same, but having some sort of shared vision and having some sort of shared way of which we are nourishing the relationship, that is important. How that looks can vary, but often there can be this attachment to a partner, quote unquote, doing the work. And this is where the dynamic shows up, and we spoke to it before, is often this dynamic shows up when the pendulum has swung. So people-pleasing person does some self-work, realizes they need boundaries and that they've got needs, and so the pendulum has swung. So now they're like, you need this, this is the boundary, this is my boundary, this is what I need, etc. And it can create that dynamic where the other person's like, hang on, you've been doing this work, but you're less kind than you were before. I'm not seeing the benefits of this work, right? So don't tell me how good it is because you find it interesting and you're doing this program that you're loving. Don't tell me this, like, show me, right? Because a lot of the time when the person who isn't, quote unquote, doing the work is on the outside looking in, it's like they're not seeing more fulfillment. They're seeing more challenge, right? Which can be there initially. So it's also a check ourselves moment of like, oh, am I really embodying more kindness, more compassion, more openness? Like, what's the goal of this work? Is it for me to get mine? Like what's the goal here? And it goes back to that inspiring them into it rather than criticizing them into it. You're not going to criticize anybody into their power and into, right, a growth mindset, but you can inspire them into it. And so, yeah, that was the final thing I wanted to share on that. Because, yeah, it's a big, challenging topic, and I come across it every day in my inbox.
Yeah.
One person who wants to jump in and do this couples program, and then the other person's resistant, like, every day. And so it is a tricky and a challenging one. But yeah, hopefully those points helped a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It's brought up a bit of a personal question for me because I feel like I've had beautiful relationships where I've been given, a multitude of lessons that I've really taken on. And I feel like every time I've left a relationship and gotten really clear on what I wanted next, I've always gotten that. And I was talking to a brother recently who was just sharing, like, he was in a relationship. They've now split up, but at the time
Mhm.
he was sharing he wasn't feeling like they were really meeting each other or feeling fulfilled. And I was of the opinion that, like, we can absolutely have what we want. And I, given that we do all the work and stuff, and I feel like for me, I've come from a place of being in deep listening, and a part of me has said stay until that changes. But he brought up the question, and I'd love to put it to
Mm.
you. And he's like, isn't that potentially putting you in a perpetual, never ending loop of, I always want more. And if this person doesn't fulfill it, then I'm going to move on. And I guess what I came to for myself was like, I would just love to be with someone who is willing and able to match me in the ways that I want to lean in and show up.
Mm.
But I thought that's a really good point of the perpetual just the perpetual wanting of wanting more. I'd love to hear what you'd say to that.
Yeah, it's so big, and it feels it's so long since I've been in the early relationship phase or the dating phase. Like this conversation even just feels foreign a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
it pops up a lot in long-term relationship, like this feeling, should I stay or should I go? Grass is greener, etc. And what I find is often like the light comes with the dark, right? And when we come into a relationship, we're in that honeymoon phase. We're like, oh my God, they're amazing. Yeah. And we put them on the pedestal. DeMartini talks about this, the pedestal and the pit. So initially they're on the pedestal, honeymoon phase, like, oh my God, they're amazing. And then you're together long enough. And this normally lines up with, once we're committed enough that we've got something to lose, that's when our attachment system comes online. And if we've got any sort of insecure attachment going on, that's when that shows up. And then all of a sudden we go into like what I call the shadow phase. And so that's when all of our partners' shadows and things that they were either consciously or unconsciously trying to not have us see, right? And we weren't really looking for them in the beginning either. They all start to pop up, and then we put our partner in the pit. And so like all their lack of patience, their nastiness, their selfishness or whatever, all these human qualities, right, start to come to the surface, and we feel almost a sense of betrayal. I was sold this and now I've got this. You lied. You tricked me. Right? And until we can make peace with the bothness of that, we're going to struggle because everybody's got their shit. I haven't yet to meet a human who doesn't. And so the question is like, actually, can I find someone who I'm willing to hold there and love their shitness just as much as I am their, beauty and amazingness? Because it's almost like a self-denial. If we haven't fallen in love with those potentially ugly parts of ourselves, if we're still judging those ugly parts of ourselves, we're going to judge them when they show up in our partner. We're going to struggle to have grace when our partner fucks up if we are still judging all the times that we fucked up. Right? And so that's when our ability to stay, we're not staying hoping they can fulfill their potential on the pedestal. We're staying because we know both exist and both exist in me too. And I'm aware enough of that and I'm comfortable enough to own that. Right? Because otherwise, it can be this constant looking, but it's this skewed perfection that, to be honest, a lot of the self-development industry has absolutely amplified. If I just biohack my morning and do all my inner child work, I'll be perfect. And I won't have these annoying human tendencies. And it's like, I'm sorry, you will. You might be on top of them. You might expand your awareness around them. But at the end of the day, everybody's shit stinks still.
Yeah.
And we try to get away from that. We try to do enough work to get away from that. And we want a partner who's done enough work that they've gotten away from theirs. And we're chasing ghosts. And until we can just stop, accept our own humanity, have grace for our own humanity, have grace for our own mistakes, have grace for our own flaws, right? Own them, acknowledge them. Then we can offer that to our partner. And we won't want to run away from that in our partner. Yeah. And so what you shared though about, I really want a partner who has a willingness to grow. Beautiful. Do you know what I mean? That's the example I gave before when you were asking about that. If it's just a straight up no, and you're like, I like a life partner who has this is really important for me, then that's fair enough. That's like values mismatch and beautiful. We can lovingly let them go, right? I feel like the tricky part is people fall into relationships, sometimes fall into parenthood, and then start asking these questions. That's when it gets painful and hard and confusing, because it's like, oh, and through no fault of their own, they just might not have been asking these questions. We weren't taught to ask these questions. We weren't taught to approach relationship in this way. We just do it. We find somebody that we are attracted to and makes us laugh, and we think they'd probably be a good parent, and then we do the thing, right? And we don't ask these high level questions.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's my take on that perpetual looking. Often we're trying to avoid our own humanity, and so we're judging it in our partner. Whereas when there's so much healing and growth available in the staying. Yeah. And then it's just, is this a fundamental values mismatch? And I want to be clear about values. We can have different values, a different hierarchy of values, and still be beautiful partners. You don't have to have the same values as your partner. You just need to love and appreciate your partner and their values hierarchy and see how them living that way benefits them, benefits you, and benefits the relationship. Whereas often if our partner's values are different, on the surface, it looks like that doesn't benefit us. Yeah. And if we can't see that, we are going to unconsciously want them to not live in that alignment with their values. So we're literally wanting them to be someone they're not so that they can fit who we want them to be. And when you say it like that, you're like, well, that sounds silly, but it's what we're all doing to a certain degree. I wish they'd just not be as excited about that, or be a bit more excited about that. And so doing that values work, it doesn't mean they have to be the same values. That being said, core values around, say, how we want to raise kids, core values around, how we want to live our life, like some fundamental stuff. If there is big mismatches on that, prepare to be navigating conflict often. Right? So it's not that, they don't matter, but what I see is like, well, my partner doesn't value health as much as I do. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Right? Or it's not that that doesn't matter, but that doesn't have to matter. What do they value? How does that benefit you? How does that benefit the relationship? How are you better off that your partner doesn't value health and they values this instead? Because there will be ways. Right? So yeah, a little bit of a rant, but
Nice.
I hope that was helpful.
No, I got so much from that. Thank you. And I'm just having a little internal giggle at the end, because I actually came to an ex-partner and was like, I need you to want to be healthy. And he was like, you can't ask that of me. And I was like, fair. and so reframing it around like, I desire to be in connection with someone who values their health in the way that I do. And
And it's what does that, because values are so strong, right? That if somebody is, because when you say value health the way you do, you wanted him to be healthy. What did you actually want? Did you want him to have more energy? Did you want him to have more presence? Like there'll be something you would have wanted on the other side that being healthy was going to get him. His pathway to getting that thing might not be the green juice that you think he needs to drink or the whatever, right? It might be him having more time to draw because he's inspired by drawing. And when he's living in alignment with somebody living in alignment with their values is energized, straight up. Like, and so it's, what do I actually want? Like, or would you say another one is like you want more shared experiences? And so if he valued health and wanted to be healthy, we could have more shared experience of going to the sauna together or cooking meals together in this way that I want to cook. So there'll be something that we want and we think it's the first thing, but it's not. It's that second thing. We just think this is how we're going to get it. And so clarity on what the actual thing is that we desire, and then not controlling how they come into that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Beautiful. That's really gold. I can really just see the radical, the significance of the radical responsibility piece and the turning the mirror. And I do feel that in the personal development world, like women have kind of created this hang up around some of these things of like, this is just what I've witnessed, I'm not saying they all do that.
I'd love to hear what you're referring to more specifically.
Yeah, just that I feel there's so many women doing so much work on themselves, which is incredible. And then it perhaps creates this like idealistic, I need you to meet me in this way, in the way that I am, and if you're not, you're failing.
Yeah.
And
Creates a false sense of superiority.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And naturally, because there isn't as many spaces at this point in time for men to be exploring themselves in whatever unique way is resonant to them. Yeah. So this has been really, really valuable. And I feel something I'm asking, I intend to ask all the men on that come on the podcast is, what does freedom mean to you as a man in relationship, but in general as a thing as well?
Yeah, that's such a good question.
Mm-hmm.
The title of the very first episode of my Thriving in Fatherhood podcast, I had a chat with my man Nick Perry, Rhythm Health, worth a follow. But the title was Redefining Freedom, because we have a certain definition of freedom. I'll speak as men, I think as humans, but I'll just speak as a man, that freedom means no responsibility, the ability to travel, the ability like to go and be free.
Mm-hmm.
And we externalize it. When I have this amount of money, when I have this amount of mobility, when I have this little responsibility, I'll feel free. And we externalize it. And now I consider freedom to be very much an internal game. Like, how can I feel free? And to me, that is when there's no resistance to what is, right? And so can I feel free when what my kids are screaming at each other, there's a pile of dishes, and do you know what I mean? Anybody can feel free on the mountaintop. Anybody can feel free with a one-way ticket around the world. And so my definition of freedom has changed to sort of my ability to be with what is without it needing to change. That is coupled with, if that's not a passive to surrender to just whatever's happening, but that moment to moment feeling of freedom is that can I be with what is? And then in being with what is, that might inspire me to change things and to evolve things. But it comes from that. The other thing that freedom to me is like, and we've spoken about it a bit, but like that radical responsibility. Because I'm not free if I'm at victim to somebody else's anything, right? Whereas if it's their fault, right, I'm not free because I have no autonomy to do anything about it. Whereas if I've contributed to this and I take radical responsibility for what's happening in my life, I feel more autonomy. Therefore, I'm going to feel more freedom. And so it's, moving away from the external conditions of freedom and cultivating this internal sense of freedom.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like there's, through my witnessing as well of brothers and relationships, I can see that younger relationship to that being the external. And then I have in brothers I've talked to who are older or who are husbands or fathers, I have witnessed the beautiful maturation of that theme. And just to close before I ask you what's on the horizon for you and how people can find you, what do you do to help yourself other than the radical responsibility, like in the small moments in the busyness, like what has helped you find that?
Yeah. So this goes back to the answer to that first question about what men struggle with is like, what do I need? Because I'm a recovering people pleaser. Like, I'll do everything for everybody. Don't worry, I've got it. Like, that's been my thing. And there's gold in that. Do you know what I mean? Absolute gold. But if it's at self-detriment, then it's not true service. It's just a pattern that's playing out. And so my work has been around recognizing what I need and making space for that in life. Like, and anchoring that, because it will get swept up in family, work, business, relationship, kids. If it's not in the calendar, it's not going to happen. And so literally creating space for myself in the calendar and for me, that's like look after my body. That's to work out or to run or to do some breath work. So there's that. And then there is one that's come up recently actually is owning more so my need for solitude. right? And so it's like, I love my family and I need time away from them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually just owning that without it being a bad thing, without feeling guilty about that has been, um, yeah, really important for maintaining that sense of freedom, if you want to use that word, but it's more so just inner peace and inner alignment. Um, yeah, those are the things, like not recognizing what I need and being as proactive as possible without it. Because otherwise if I'm not proactive about acknowledging what I need, requesting it, making space for it, I'm putting that burden on my wife
Mm.
to recognize that I'm pissed off enough or I'm shut down enough or I'm stressed enough, and then for her to try to implement it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because it's got to happen one way or another. And so that's been my real learning, is being proactive about that. Yeah, I'm putting that in the calendar. It can sound like overly practical, but like if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't happen. And so that's really how I ensure that, yeah, I'm looking after myself and maintaining what I need to maintain so I can maintain the family.
Beautiful. Nice. And so, yeah, how can people work with you? Is there anything on the horizon? I'll put links to all the things as well.
Yeah. So I've got lots of free resources and free stuff out there. I've got a Substack, Love, Sex and Laundry, where I speak more to relationship stuff. I've got a podcast, Thriving in Fatherhood, that's got about 60 odd episodes there as well. And then just stuff on Instagram. So lots of free stuff coming up. I've got a relationship mastery program. Enrollments are open at the moment. And so that's a 6-month deep dive for couples. That's just, yeah, a phenomenal experience diving into a lot of the stuff we've spoken about and lots more as well. And then what else have I got? I've got a weekend men's intensive. So we're talking about spaces for men and men to dive in and do the work. So I've got a weekend men's intensive coming up on the 18th of July on the sunny coast as well. So these are always really powerful spaces for men to dive in and explore this work.
Beautiful. Nice. Oh, yeah, it's so needed.
Yeah. And I feel like there's more and more. And it's funny you say that maybe it's definitely just my network, but I know if a man came to me, I could point him in 8 different directions to go and
Amazing.
find some amazing men's work. Do you know what I mean? Either if it's with me or with lots of other people. And I have women come to me because their partners come and do a weekend and they're like, what's there for the women? And maybe it's just my network, how my network's evolved, but I'm struggling to find spaces that I back in
Yeah.
where women can go and do the work now. To be honest, it's
Amazing.
easy for me to point men in that direction, which is
True. We got to cross-pollinate a little more.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, I feel like I could keep going and going, but that feels complete for me. Is there anything you want to leave people with that's lingering, or just
No, nothing's really alive. I feel like we covered some good ground. I appreciated the conversation, and I really appreciated your lean towards that radical responsibility as well. And I feel like that's the biggest thing for anybody listening is, yeah, often we can lean away from that. Like I learned that as a concept 10 years ago, and I keep having to remind myself 10 years later because I naturally fall into that place of wanting to point the finger and blame. And so if anything, it's just like this game, it's the infinite game. Yes, every new level has a new devil, and we need to keep being willing to lean in. And that's where the growth like truly lives.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your
Thanks for
time.
having me.
I'm really excited to share this with people today, actually. If
Amazing.
all goes well.
Yeah, great to chat. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, Self Fam, that's it for this episode. If there was someone you're thinking of throughout that you think would get a lot from listening to it, then please share far and wide so we can all support each other on our journey of thriving. And now, moving forward, as I mentioned, but made an exception for this special episode, we will be continuing with releases fortnightly. And if you're loving the show, please take a moment to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. This helps in a huge way to grow the show and help it reach more people. So if you could just take that split second to just click that button, that would be so deeply appreciated. And finally, if you'd like to connect and jump on my Instagram and shoot me a message there, I'd love to hear from you. And that's it from me today. Until next time.